No, Supriya.
At rest. Right. So now the question is, what do you mean by a charge? What do you mean by charge? So this also we discussed in the previous class. Hmm? Screen share avlega. Reason. Okay. So what do you mean by charge? This also we discussed. I don't want the technical definition. Can someone say what exact? Where do you hear this word charge? You mainly see in atoms. So what does atom consist of? Electrons, protons, and neutrons. So out of this, electrons are negatively charged particles, protons are positively charged particles, and neutrons obviously are neutral particles. Right? So when you look at the basic structure of an atom according to Bohr's theory, how does it appear to us? So you have a centralmost part which is called as the nucleus. So what does the nucleus consist of? It consists of protons and neutrons. So what charge does it have? Obviously positive charge, which is dominated by whom? Protons, right? So any material in this world has to be neutral. If anything has energy, what will happen to it? You know this fact. It will start reacting. Or it cannot be stable. If it is having energy, it cannot be stable. It will start doing something, right? For example, if I have this object, I'm holding it in my hand. If I release it, what is going to happen? So what energy is getting so what energy does it have when I hold it at this point? It has potential energy, right? When I drop it, it is going to get converted to kinetic energy. It is happening because it has some energy at this particular point, right? Now, if this atom has energy, means it is unstable. But if you observe, most of the things are stable in this world. So if it has to be stable, what else is needed? Obviously, you need electrons. So those electrons are obviously negatively charged particles, but how many are supposed to be? How many electrons do you need for that particular material to be stable? Equal number to whom? Equal number to the protons, so that you have positive, equal number of positive and negative charges, which is put together as neutral. So when I talk about a charge, see, charge is something which you cannot see because nobody has seen an electron. It's only a theory, right? So when you talk about a charge, obviously you cannot see it. But the question is, will you be able to sense it? Will you be able to sense it? For example, if I ask you about magnetism, will you be able to sense it? Yes, you can feel it, right? Using what device? You obviously need a magnet, right? You need a magnet where you take it close to some iron particles or some magnetic substances. It starts attracting towards itself, right? That happens. You will be able to see it. It is an obvious thing. But when it comes to charge, it is a technical, it is a tricky thing that you can't see it. But if the question is, will you be able to sense it? What do you think? Will you be able to sense charge? Do you think? Yes or no? How many of you say yes? Raise your hand. Will you be able to sense charge? If I ask you, there is charge around this, will you be able to sense it? No. So everybody accepts that you cannot sense charge. Okay. Let's think about it. Okay, I'll go back to the basic. When I talk about charge, what are all the types of charges you people know? You know positive charge and you know negative charge. So you are saying you're giving two different signs to it. Similar to a magnet. When you talk about a magnet, you have two poles. What are they? You have a north pole and a south pole. So north pole is something similar to a positive charge. South pole is something similar to a negative charge. Have this context in your mind because this chapter is similar to the fifth chapter that you're going to learn. Okay. So question is, when can you say a material is positively charged? When it loses electrons or gains proton, what is the right option? See, I can call a material to be positively charged. One option that I'm giving is lose electrons. The other option that I'm giving is gain protons because there is some imbalance created in the material in terms of charge. Why? It is easy to remove from the outermost shell, right? That's the answer. Similarly, when can you say a material is negatively charged? When it is going to gain electron, obviously, because it is, you can give the charge to the outermost shell easily, right? So when you say these two things, the next question that I'm going to ask is, what will happen according to the theory you know from the lower grades when you bring two positive charge closer to each other? When you bring them close to each other, you say repel. Repel is what? It's a force. Is it a pulling force or a pushing force? It's a pushing force. Each particle is trying to push the other from away from itself, right? When there is a force that is acting, then how can you say that you cannot experience charge? It's a logical question, right? So when I asked you, will you be able to experience charge? You people told no. But when it comes to the theory, when you say when you bring two positive charges close to each other such that they will be able to exert a force on each other, then obviously it is an experience. That experience is happening due to whom? It is happening due to whom? If I bring two neutral particles close to each other, will they attract or repel? Nothing is going to happen, right? They get cancelled out. It is going to be as like they are going to stay at the position where they are. Whereas when you try to bring two positive charges, they are going to repel. When you try to bring two negative charges, they are going to repel. When you bring a positive and a negative charge close to each other, they are obviously going to get attracted because we know unlike charges attract, right? So now tell me, will you be able to experience charge? Yes. But the only problem is what? You need to carry out what process? There is only one way. You can say material is charged only by one process. What is it? Either removal of electron or gain of electrons. These are the only two possibilities. That's what the theory says. So how will you be able to sense charge? That's what my first question is. If you are able to sense it, what is the type of definition you are going to give to it? That's another question. If you give a definition to it, what are all the properties it is going to exhibit? That's the third question. So there are many questions that are going to come in order, right? So let's try to understand how a charge is actually created. Before that, tell me what exactly charge is. Students who are online can also answer. If you are able to hear me, don't tell me the definition that I gave you last class. Yeah. So what is charge? It is a property of whom? Of a material. Okay. Can I say any material? The answer is yes. It is possible for you to create charge on any material, right? So property of a material to do what? As soon as a material is charged, what is going to happen? If I say a particular material is charged, what do you think it will do to the neighboring particles? Attract or repel. Okay. So I just want to extend this question alone. You people told me when two positive charges are coming close to each other, they repel. Negative charges come close to each other, repel. Positive and negative, that is unlike charges, come close to each other, they attract. Now, if I think of a positive charge and a neutral particle, what do you think will happen? That is also a possibility, right? Because when I say neutral particle, it still has charges in it under balanced conditions. It's not like it is completely uncharged, right? What do you think will happen in this scenario? Sorry, it's something similar to a chemical bonds only. What will happen? You think of a dipole. You think of a dipole, no? What will happen? For a chemical bond to be formed, what will the molecule do? Very good. You're also almost there. It induces another. What is it? Okay, it induces in such a way that this positive charge, whichever is there outside, will be able to attract the negative charge from whom? From the so-called neutral particles, such that the negative charges will get concentrated at one of the ends, and the positive charge which is present at the nucleus will slightly get shifted from the central position. As a result of which, the molecule will no more be spherical in shape, it will somewhat become like this. Right? You would have seen this, right? Positive, here you will have negative charge, and here you are obviously going to have a positive charge. So what is this process called as? ये dipole है. Dipole movement will happen in a dipole. I didn't speak about dipole. Dipole is nothing. Dipole, now what is a dipole? The di, two, pole, polarity. HCl is a dipole, polar dipole. Right? So from that, tell me a definition. HCl, now what is it? H plus, Cl minus. So when there are two particles which have opposite charges of equal magnitude, and when they are separated by a very small distance, that is what we call it as a dipole. Don't worry, you have electric dipole also in your physics syllabus. This will help you to understand. Okay, but I just wanted to find out what exactly will happen when a positive and a neutral particle is coming close to each other. Are you guys clear? So what will happen? Though the particle is neutral, but it still consists of a positive and a negative charge, which are under what condition? Balanced condition, because they are in equal number, so that the negative charges will get drifted towards one side and the positive charge will get repelled slightly away, but still it will be within the atom only. Not like they are going to get separated and broken down into subparticles. No. Don't have this confusion. If you ask me a question, is this atom going to break? No. It will take a different shape, that's it. I hope that is clear. Right. So it is an intrinsic property of a material. Now tell me what charge is. What is it actually doing? It is exerting something. What is it? It is exerting force on whom? On the particles, on the neighboring particles. So it is a property of a material to exert force. When I say force, attraction and repulsion both are covered in it. When I talk about gravitational force, is it attractive or repulsive? It is only attractive. Whereas when you speak about electrostatic, it is both attractive as well as repulsive, right? So the property of a material to exert force on neighboring atoms is what we call it as charge. Now, I'm adding a word before this property which is called as intrinsic. What does intrinsic mean? It is a naturally occurring process, right? So it is a natural property of a material when it is charged to create what? To create an attraction or repulsion on the neighboring particles, right? So what are the types of charges that you people know? So types, obviously two, positive charge and negative charge. This also you would have written positive charges, electron deficient or electron excess. Electron deficient is positive charge. So sometimes what they do is, in terms of problems perspective, when they say material is positively charged, you need to have it in your mind. Suppose this, I'll come to that point. When they say it is positively charged, you need to have that it is having lesser number of electrons. Okay, so electron deficient, and negative is obviously excess electrons, or it has surplus electrons. Both are right. Right. Next is, what is the unit of charge? This also I have discussed. Coulomb. So Coulomb is the name of a scientist. So the symbol should be capital C. Right. So what is the value of charge? So charge is measured by which particle? It is electron. So, okay, I'll change the point like this. What is the charge of an electron? 1.602 into 10 power minus 19 Coulomb. Right. Next is dimensional formula. What is the dimensional formula of charge? Sorry? Ampere? Ampere into time. Why is it happening? Because you know the basic definition of current. I is equal to Q by T. So Q is equal to I into T. So when you write the dimensional formula, what is to be kept in your mind? What should be in the dimensional formula? What parameters should be there? Only the 7 fundamental quantities. What are the 7 fundamental quantities? Mass, length, time, current. Ampere is unit. The current, candela is a unit. Candela is a unit of whom? It is intensity, luminous intensity. Next, temperature and amount of substance which is measured in moles. I hope you guys know this, right? I'm not going into much detail. I is equal to Q into T. So the dimensional formula of Q is equal to dimensional formula of I into dimensional formula of time, which is ampere into time. That is the reason why we have this. Clear? Now the next question is charge a scalar quantity or a vector quantity? This is a very, very important point to be known. Because when you solve problems, you need to know whether you need to do vector analysis or a scalar analysis for a problem. And so charge is vector quantity. You are saying it is because it has positive and negative, but the answer is wrong. It's not a vector. It does not follow the vector laws of addition. So those who don't know what a vector is, what is a vector? Vector is a physical quantity which has magnitude and direction. Most importantly, what is it supposed to do? It should follow the vector laws of addition. Okay, I'll give you an example. Other example, time. It has a magnitude, it has a direction. What is the direction? Always forward. You cannot go back. Similarly, current. It has magnitude, it has direction. What is the direction? Higher to lower potential. But still, these are all not vector quantities. What is the reason? Because they fail to follow vector laws of addition. The triangle law of addition and all those things are there, right? You have learned. So they do not follow those laws, because you will not, when I ask you to add two charges, suppose I give you the charge of one material is 1 coulomb, the charge of the other material is -2 coulomb. You will not add them as 1 I cap plus -2 j cap, something like this. No. Because they do not have direction also. They only have sign. Right? Am I clear? So it is a what quantity? Scalar quantity. Have this point in your mind. Right? Next. So now we saw that if a material has to get charged, you need to either give excess electrons or make it lose electrons, or what else can you do? You can also create a process of induction. That is, when you take if you have a positively charged material or a negatively charged material in your hand, when you take it close to whom? Neutral particle, then you can see that the charges will get shifted, one close, one away, depending on what type of charge you are taking close. Am I right? Are you guys able to understand that point? Right? The question is, if I have to make a material gain excess electrons or lose electrons, what are all the processes I can think of? Till now we saw what is charge. Before we discuss about charges at rest, first we need to understand what is charge. I hope we have some basic idea about what a charge is. You know what is a unit. The next question I have in my mind is, theoretically I know, yes, electrons are to be lost or gained, but how do I do it practically? Is it possible for us to practically visualize it? That's another question we need to raise. So if at all you are able to do it, then what are all the methods we can follow? If I call that as methods of charging, one of the methods we have already discussed. What is it? You can do it through the process of induction. That is, when you take a charged particle close to a neutral particle, yes, you are able to induce charges in the neutral material and you are able to create some charge. Okay. The other process. So induction is a process which is not physical. There is no physical contact, right? We took them close. The intermediate medium is acting like a conducting medium and the charges are able to interact. Now, how can you do it physically? If you do it, what is that process called? When you take one material close to another, people told rubbing. It's a perfect answer. But by rubbing, what are you going to achieve? What exactly are you doing by rubbing? You are creating friction, right? Due to friction, what will happen? Heat is generated, that is okay. Apart from heat, so heat has something to do with the mechanical effects. Yes, mechanically, if you speak, heat is generated, but something else also should happen for the so-called charging process to happen. What is it? Heat, do you think so? You're right. So heat makes the electrons move faster in the process of, in what way? So there are different kinds of motions that you have. You have translatory motion, you have rotational motion and vibrational motion. What do you think will heat do? Heat will try to put the electrons in vibrational motion. When they are in vibrational motion, what kind of energy do they gain? When something is in motion, what is the energy possessed by it? Kinetic energy. So the kinetic energy will increase, and the electron will gain sufficient amount of energy from jump from whom? From the neutral particle, and it will get transferred to somewhere else. We will visualize it, okay? You will be able to see it today, don't worry. So methods of charging. One of the methods is what? Charging by the process of induction. This induction can also be called as, you learn about other induction also. Anybody remembers the name of 6th chapter? Electromagnetic induction, right? Here also you are using the word induction. Then what is it? This should be called as electrostatic. Nowhere in the books they use it. Okay, this is called as electrostatic induction. Right. Next, charging by rubbing the objects. Against each other. Does this make sense? Yes. Shall we do a small activity and see? Is this possible? Shall we try? Okay. So can someone give me a few? Normal one. So what do you think we can do with this? Sweater. Let's switch off this fan for some. Pannada paakalam. It's okay, right? Okay. So what do you think this is? It's a balloon, right? Is it neutral or is it charged? Guys, are you able to see?
No, sir.
No?
No, sir.
So this is neutral, right? Will it be able to attract any other particle? So obviously, no. So I try to keep it on the wall. It's going to fall, right? So what can we do to create a charge on this material? So you rub the object against some material, right? So what is the material we can think of? So you rub it against your object. Pandriya na panduma. எனக்கு இல்லடா இருக்கும் நீ என்ன பண்ற இருவது பண்ண பேப்பர் ஒரு நிமிஷம் I want no, just give me a small piece of paper and try to tear it into small pieces so that its weight is not more. Pen வச்சு என்ன பண்ணுவேன் வரும் ஆனா கொஞ்சம் மாத்தல இருக்கேன் இது heavy quality. Somebody having a lighter வரும்ன்றியா வருமா See, sometimes it may fail also, okay? Don't get me. You need to have a tri-step. Okay. Keep it through. Without charging, bring it close. Nothing is happening. இல்லையா தப்பு பண்ணு Yeah. You are able to see? So how is it happening? So what do you think has happened? So let's try to. I'll rub it more, but I'm not sure. The force is very less. Okay, I'm sorry about it. I think the paper is heavy. If you're actually able to do this, no, you can actually see that it gets stuck to the wall also. Right? So here, if I talk about this paper, okay, if I talk about this paper, initially this was neutral, this material was neutral. So by rubbing it against my head, what happened? So you transferred charge. So by transferring the charge, this side what happened? Okay, whatever it is, excess amount of charge has got developed. Okay. So the charge present over here, what do you think will do? So this paper initially was neutral. So this also has equal amount of positive and negative charge. So in this, what happened? So suppose this is negatively charged, excess amount of electrons are there in this. Okay, then what would have happened to this paper? So the part which was close, the paper's part which was close to the, did I say negative? Yeah, negative charge that was developed will go away and the positive charges will be closer to the material. That is why you were able to find some attraction. There is one more important point also if you observe. If I keep the paper like this, see, if I hold the paper like this and release it, is it coming in the upward direction or downward direction? Obvious reason. What is it? But when I kept it here, it didn't travel in the direction of gravity. It traveled opposite. It went against gravity. So what is the other theory that you can understand? Electrostatic force is a much stronger force compared to the gravitational force. That is another important conclusion that we can draw. It is almost 10 power 40 times greater. Right? So what are all the processes that we did here? So what are all the processes that we did, guys? So one is we rub two objects together. That is through the process of friction, and the other is the papers got attracted to the balloon because of induction. Right? So that's what we saw practically. Now, how is it theoretically going to work? Let's see. So let's talk about charging through induction. Right? So, if I take a material which is charged and if I take it to a particle which is neutral, okay, there is another important word I'm going to introduce, be careful, okay. So when I say neutral, it has equal number of positive and equal number of negative. Let me call it as two positive charges and two negative charges, okay. So when this positive charge is taken close such that they are able to interact, for example, if you look at the balloon, I keep it at this distance, it will not be able to attract. Why? Because the charge that was developed was not sufficient enough to pull this charge. But when I take it close, yes, I was able to see some reaction. Right? In a similar way, if these two charges are kept at a sufficient distance where they are able to interact, that sufficient distance might be anything depending on the magnitude of charge. I'm not concerned about that. If they are able to interact, what do you think will happen inside? What do you think will happen to those positive charges? The positive charges will tend to move away and the negative charges will move close. Right? Can I call this process as induction? Right? So you can say that the charges are induced inside the material, as a result of which it has got polarized. So what do you mean by polarized? Name is suggesting pole is a word which is derived from polarity. Iced is something has happened. So polarities have been created on the material. So there is an exchange, right? There is a density of negative charge on the left hand side and more density of positive charge on the right hand side. And this kind of a process is what is called as polarization. And this material is said to be polarized. So polarization is a process. Okay. Now comes another question. If I take this neutral particle away from the positive charge, I bring it back again. What do you think will happen inside the material? That is called as redistribution of charges. If that has happened, can I say the neutral material has got charged? Think about it. I'm repeating it again, listen. Left hand side is positively charged. I hope everybody is clear because it has deficiency of, it is electron deficient. Right hand side is a neutral particle. It has two positive charges, two negative charges. When I took the positive charge close to the neutral particle, what happened? The negative charges came closer and the positive charges got drifted away. So that process, we call it as polarization and the material is said to be polarized. Okay. If I bring back the neutral particle away, if I take the neutral particle slightly away from the positive charge where they both are not able to interact, what will happen? The neutral particle is still neutral or is it charged? I'm repeating the question. Is the neutral particle still neutral or it has got charged? I'm bringing this neutral particle away. From whom? Away from the positive charge. Is it still going to be neutral or have you already created charge on that material? Do you think you created charge on the material? It is still going to be neutral because you neither removed electrons nor added any electrons. You only did redistribution. You disturbed its alignment, that's it. Okay, so if this material has to obviously get charged, it should decrease the positive value or increase the negative value. For that to happen, what we can do is connect the other end to the ground. Connect the other end to the ground. We call it as grounding or earthing. You would have heard this word in domestic circuits in your 10th standard, right? When you do this earthing process, what do you think will happen to the positive charge? They will flow to the earth, as a result of which the negative charge alone is going to be on the material, and now the material is charged. Are you able to understand? This is where the confusion starts. Are you able to understand the difference between polarization and creating charge on a material? So polarization means what you're doing, you're actually disturbing the position and you're creating charges on the material in such a way that one end is completely negative charge and the other end is completely positive charge. That doesn't mean the material is charged, but if you have to make it charge, you have to connect it to the ground so that the excess electrons or excess electrons are flowing towards the earth or coming from the earth, something can happen. So when you do this, now you can confidently say the material is negatively charged with the so-called 2 electrons which are existing. Am I clear? Right. This is what we call it as charging through the process of induction. Now the material is charged. Before the intermediate step is only polarization. Have that word in your mind, and second chapter it is very, very important. It is happening. Where? In the first position or second position? Yes, it will happen. It is going to have excess amount of negative charge. That is why I am saying it is charged. Okay. Alright. Next is, what do you think will happen by charging through the process of rubbing? This is a very simple thing. Everybody knows this. Last year you would have learned when two blocks are moving one over the other, what will happen? There is a friction. So due to friction, what is created? So let's try to draw a block diagram. Block diagram means what are all the process that is going to happen. Due to friction, what is generated? You people already told heat is generated. This heat obviously can be experienced. You rub the surface and keep it on your hand, you can see it. Due to this heat, what will happen to the particles? The electrons start vibrating with greater or kinetic energy. Electrons vibration increase, as a result of which kinetic energy of the particles will increase. If you start creating more amount of heat, what will happen? The kinetic energy would be sufficient enough to knock the electrons from their outermost shell. It is something similar to photoelectric effect, except the fact that in photoelectric effect you use light, here you are using heat. Heat another friction or heat is getting generated. So as a result of this, the electrons will escape from the surface and the material will get charged. So one material will tend to lose the electrons, the other material will tend to gain electrons. So what will happen? So if one material is positively charged, the other material will obviously be negatively charged, such that the whole system's charge, if you try to calculate, when I say whole system, how many boxes does it contain? The two boxes put together, if you try to calculate the total charge, it is still going to be 0. Because initially, what were the charges present on the material? Initially, before you started rubbing, both were neutral. When I say material is neutral, what is the amount of charge present on it? Obviously, 0. Right? So initially, whatever the system had, when you try to rub two objects against each other, when the charges are getting transferred from one material to another, still the total charge on the whole system is going to be the value with which you started. Okay, are you guys able to understand this thing? So these are all the methods by which you can charge a particular material. Right, but the only unfortunate thing is you need to create so much of charge to observe all these things. Whereas magnets are stronger, that is why you can feel it. Okay. Next is, if at all you charge a material, okay, this point is not there in your textbook, but I just wanted to say, if at all you charge a material, what is a device which you can use to find whether charge is there on a material? You would have learned in your lower something like this. Gold leaf dash. Not learned? It's called an electroscope. So electroscope is a device which will be able to tell you whether a material is charged or not. Okay, and electroscope works on which principle? It works on the principle of induction. It's just an extra information, you can make a note of it. Okay, so electroscope is a device which is used to sense charge. It will not tell you the value. For example, if I ask you what is an ammeter, what does it do? I'll tell two devices name. Okay, one is an ammeter and second is a galvanometer. I'm sure you would have heard both. So ammeter tells what, and what does a galvanometer do? Ammeter will tell the magnitude of current. It will tell you, see, if you have a 0 to 5 ampere range ammeter, it will tell you how much is the current present in it. What does a galvanometer do? It can actually not say the direction. It can do only one thing. It will tell whether current is flowing or not. It's a sensor. Okay, it's a sensitive device. In a similar way, electroscope is a sensitive device. It is not a measuring device. Okay, it will tell whether a material is charged or not. If the gold leaves will be like this. When you try to take the material close to each other, the gold leaves will get diverged from each other. Okay, the more is the divergence, more is the charge. That is what you can say, but you cannot find its value. Clear? So gold leaf electroscope is used to detect the presence of what? Presence of charge. Right? So this is a basic theory. From here, we are going to get into some exam related details. Okay. The first thing that we need to see is what are the basic properties of charge. So if a material is charged, what are all the properties that material is going to exhibit? Okay. First is called as quantization of charge. Did you hear this word quantization somewhere? You would have definitely learned in chemistry. I'll tell the name of the chapter also, atomic structure. Under Bohr's theory. Angular momentum is Have you heard or not? Angular momentum is said to be quantized. Do you know this? Okay, leave it. You didn't learn Bohr's theory at all? Deleted. Deleted. They didn't tell in the they didn't teach in the beginning. Okay. Anyways, you learn this here. Don't worry. So quantization of charge. Next is conservation of charge. Third is additivity of charge. These are the three basic properties which are again very, very important, because when you're solving the problem, you will indirectly apply all these concepts. Okay. So let's start with the first term, that is quantization of charge. So what do you think quantization means? Always try to break the word quantity something. It speaks something about the quantity of a material, right? So when I say quantization of charge, one thing is very strong in our mind: charge can be created only by one subatomic particle. What is it? It is only because of electrons. Nothing else can take the control over. So if you lose electrons, positive charge. If you gain electrons, negative charge, right? So this quantization of charge says that the total charge, don't write, first listen, total charge created on any material is an integral multiple of whom? Of the basic unit of charge. What is the basic unit of charge? That is a unit of charge. That is SI unit, basic unit. I'm repeating it. Who decides the charge of a material? Electrons. What is the basic charge of a basic unit of charge? Is nothing but charge of 1 electron, right? So listen to this carefully, okay? This is a very, very important point. Listen to this carefully. When I say the total charge created on any material is an integral multiple. What do you mean by integral? Integral is a word which is derived from which term? It's obviously integer. It's a mathematical term, right? So any material is an integral multiple of the basic unit of charge. That is, if I have a material, if I do charge a material using the process of induction or friction, what can I do? I can either create a basic charge of 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb, or what is the next charge that I can create on the material? 3.2 into 10 power minus 19. If I ask you, is it possible for you to create a charge of 2.8 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb? Answer is no. Why? Because, yes, here, if I say the charge of a material is 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb, you can confidently say it has lost. Okay, if I call it as positive charge, positive means it has lost. It has lost 1 electron. Plus 3.2 is it has lost 2 electrons. But 2.8 means it is a fractional value. But what does the statement say? It has to be only an integer value, because a part of the electron cannot get transferred there. Either one complete electron has to go or complete electron has to come. That's what this states. Is that clear? Please make a note of it. Total charge created on any material is an integral multiple of the basic unit of charge. Okay, this is the statement. The next question. Will I be able to write it in a mathematical form? Will I be able to give an expression, a mathematical expression to it? So charge, okay, I forgot to tell this point. The basic symbol used for charge is what? That is SI unit. Again, unit nala Q da. They use small q or capital Q. E is used only for electron or proton, both. Okay. So if I say the charge on any material is Q, then the Q, according to the statement, should be a multiple of whose charge? Should be a multiple of E. And what multiple is it supposed to be? It is an integral multiple. If I write it as N, then this I can call it as a statement, but I need to add one more thing to it. What is it? Why am I doing it? because the charge can either be positive or negative. So Q is equal to plus or minus Ne is the mathematical representation of what? Of the quantization of charge, and this is a very, very, very important point. Have this in your mind. N stands for integer. Integer. Integral multiples one another. It is integer. E in it is charge of electron 1.6 into something. N is an integral value 1, 2, other mari. Okay. Am I clear? Next. 1 minute. We'll talk to them. Guys.
Yes, sir.
Those who are online. Am I clear? Proceed.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what is the second basic property I told you? Conservation of charge. This word conservation is not new. What is conservation of charge? Conservation of energy. Energy can neither be created nor be destroyed, but it can be transferred from one form to another form. Similarly, conservation of charge also has a similar definition. One is charge can neither be created nor be destroyed, but it can be transferred from one material to another. That is one way of stating it. That's a very, very basic thing, because wherever you see the word conservation, it is obviously meant that nothing is lost. Right? Conservation is something like preserving. You store something, you have it till the end of it. What is the more technical way of defining it? That's what I'm going to say now. So, if I talk about a system, which is isolated, listen to this carefully. Okay? When I say a system, what do we mean by system? In physics or in science, what does a system mean? System is need not be thermodynamic. System has a definition. System is something which is under our study. What we are trying to study is what is a system. It can be a mechanical system, thermodynamic system, electrostatic system, anything. Okay, system is something which is under observation. So I'm using a statement like this. Listen to this carefully. If I talk about a system which is isolated, what does that mean? Need not be heat always. See, energy, heat is not the only form of energy. So isolated meaning it does not interact with the surroundings. Can I say that? Right. See, for example, when we discussed about the process of charging through friction, I took two objects and rubbed it against each other. If I call the first object as 1 and the second as 2, so how many particle system is it? It's a 2-particle system. So I can call this 2-particle system as an isolated system under what circumstances? When they do not interact with the surrounding. Okay, if you are able to create such an atmosphere, for example, if I call that balloon and this paper as an isolated system, no, I cannot. Can I call it as an isolated system? I didn't create such an atmosphere. Why? Why do you think the experiment didn't work well? That is also there. Okay. That we can say gravitational force was one of the factors. Okay. Where? You learn this later. Charges have the property to conduct. You know what is conducting, right? Right, heat, if a material is heated, if you take an iron rod and you heat it, will you be able to sense the heat? Let's say it is very hot, okay. Will you be able to sense the heat only if you touch it or if you go close to it also? You will be able to close, right? Why is it happening? Because it is radiating energy. In a similar way, what will happen to the charges is, air is a very good medium for conduction. The charges will be lost to the surrounding. That's what has happened. That's why the charge was created on the balloon, but I couldn't hold it for a longer time. Why? Because it started losing to the surroundings. So I cannot call it as an isolated system. But theoretically speaking, if I'm able to create such an atmosphere, you can do it, not theoretically, you can actually do it, but you need other factors to be kept in mind. So if I'm able to create a situation where only these two objects are interacting and the surrounding is completely isolated, then we can call this particular system to be what? Isolated system. I'm repeating this word again and again because if your statement for conservation of charge in exam starts without isolation, without the word of isolated charge, it's wrong. Okay. So how can I state? If I talk about an isolated system, charge is conserved means, so whatever exchange is happening only between those two particles which are present in the system. For example, we'll go back to the theory that we discussed. Before I started rubbing these two objects together, what was the total charge present on it? The total charge was 0. So when I rubbed it, what happened? Alignment. The charges got exchanged. Alignment concept comes only in polarization. Okay, the charges got exchanged. They actually got transferred because the heat increased the kinetic energy. Kinetic energy gave sufficient energy for the electrons to escape from the outermost shell. So the exchange took place, and I told you an important point. If two positive charges are created here, there will only be two negative charges that are getting created. Why is that happening? Because if I treat it as an isolated system, then what should the conservation of charge be stated? How should it be stated? For an isolated system, the total charge present in the system is always a constant because it is fixed, right? So initially when I started with 0 charges, finally when I complete the experiment, though there are charges which got separated when they got transferred to the material, but if I still calculate the total value of it, how much is it supposed to be? 0, or else you are violating whom? The law of conservation of charge, right? Now let's try to give a statement to it. Please write it down. In an isolated system, the total charge is always what? A constant, or you can say is always conserved. So if you guys understood what is isolated system, I suggest you to make a note in your own words. Okay. So let's try to visualize it. If I take one material here and another material here, if I say the charge on this material is Q1 and the charge on the other material is Q2 initially, even before you started rubbing them together. Okay. So this is the, wherever you see conservation, okay, not only in this chapter, if the word conservation comes, whether it is in physics or chemistry, wherever it is, there will always be two steps. What are the two steps? One is initial condition and the second is final condition. You charge these two materials, the redistribution has already taken place. If I say the charge on this material is Q and the charge on this material is Q dash, what do you think should be the relation between two? Mathematical relation between the initial and the final conditions. Obviously, the total charge that was present here, Q1 plus Q2, is equal to Q plus Q dash. This is also a very, very, very important concept in the second chapter. Please make a note of this. At that point, I will answer up. Is there any point? Is it only the mathematical part? Sure. Did you understand the initial condition? Initial purila. So the difference is initially when the experiment marandra. When I spoke about the experiment, initially the charge on both the materials were 0. But now I am considering a system where there are how many particles? Q1 and Q2. There are two particles, right? Those two particles initially, what is the amount of charge present on them? Initially they are charged. We don't know how they are charged. We know that they have charge. So Q1 is a charge present on the first particle. Q2 is a charge present on the second particle. If I ask you what is the total charge of the system, what are you going to say? Add them, Q1 plus Q2. Now you bring them close to each other and take them away, then there will be a redistribution of charge that is taking place. Okay, the example that is okay. When the redistribution is taking place, the final charge is Q and Q dash. Now I ask what will be the mathematical equation. Are you clear? Yeah. So Q1 plus Q2 will be equal to Q plus Q dash. So that's what the mathematical equation is. Clear? Third. What is the third principle I told you? Property. Additivity of, addition of charges or additivity of charges. Here also the name itself is statistic. Additivity means addition. Right? When you add the charges, how are you supposed to add them is a question. Okay, now let's recollect the basic. So again in physics, you can add scalars and vectors. So when you add two vectors, how do you do them? You will follow the vector laws. When you add two scalars, you will follow, you cannot say scalar laws, you will rather follow something called as algebraic laws. What is the difference? What is the difference? What is the difference between me saying just add them or add them algebraically? Why am I using that word? What does algebra mainly speak about? It's okay. That is it. That's what physics is. Like you cannot add a charge and a current. That's right. No, that's not the word algebraically. I'll tell you. Sorry, da? If I have, see, in the previous example, I took the charges as Q1 and Q2. If I ask you what is the total charge on the material, Q total, what will you say? Q1 plus Q2. Okay. If I give a negative charge to this material, what will you say? How did you get that minus? That's what it is. Okay, I'll take another diagram. If I have a system whose charge is Q1 and the other system whose charge is minus Q2, then the additivity of charges says the total charge present on all the materials in the system is equal to, listen to this word carefully, it is equal to the algebraic sum of all the values present in the system. Algebraic sum of all the charges present in the system. Meaning, I am adding Q1 and Q2, I'm still using a plus sign, but this Q2 has a negative sign. This is what you need to be careful. Whereas when I talk about a vector, what you take into consideration? You take the unit vectors into consideration, I cap, j cap and all those things. That is the difference. So here what is the important word? Like isolated system is the second one. Here what is the important word? You should not forget. Don't forget that you should not write it as just sum. You lose marks. It is the algebraic sum. The algebraic has meaning in it. Okay. So how do you state it? Now you people tell me. Total charge present on whom? I'll again call it as an isolated system. Present on an isolated system is equal to what? Is equal to the algebraic sum of whom? Of the individual charges present in the system. Okay. What did you say, da? Yeah? The value is about charge. Algebraic sum of the individual charges present in the system. Are you guys able to understand this? So you're still doing addition with the sign of the charge, not the direction. That's an important point. It's 5 Okay, so this is all about additivity of charges. I will just explain one law, with that we'll end the session. Okay, so you'll be able to find a similarity with what you learned last year. I'll just teach that. So with this, the properties of charges, sign, dimensional formula, everything is over. The basic things about charges completely taught it. Now we are going to concentrate. If you have a system of charges, how are they going to interact? When I say interact, what am I trying to talk about? Interact or not all. It is how they are going to exert force on each other. Interact, that is the meaning. Okay, it is attraction or repulsion. Okay. So that is given by a law called as Coulomb's law. Obviously, Coulomb is the name of the scientist. Can someone state Newton's law of gravitation? Newton's law of gravitation. When 2 point masses are separated by a distance, then the force of attraction between them is directly proportional to product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance of separation between them. Then you will get F is equal to Gm and M2 by R square, something like that, right? Coulomb's law is something similar, except the fact there you speak about point masses, here you speak about point charges. So what do you mean by point charge? Charges which are of point size. Okay. So if you take 2 point charges Q1 and Q2, then the statement goes like this: the force of attraction or repulsion between whom? Between the system should contain only 2 point charges. Coulomb's law is defined only for 2-point charges. If you go more than that, you will use something called as principle of superposition. So force of attraction or repulsion between 2-point or particle charges, both mean same. 2-point or particle charges is directly proportional to whom? Product of, only difference is there you write it as product of masses, no. Here you will write it as product of magnitude of charges. Why am I using the word magnitude? Obvious reason. Why am I using the word magnitude? Because charges can either be positive or negative. Okay, whereas mass will never be negative. You cannot say -5 kilogram or something, right? So it is the product of, underline the word magnitude, magnitude of both charges and inversely proportional to whom? Huh? Inversely proportional to the square of the distance of separation between. Am I clear, guys? Right. I'll just give you the mathematical expression. Next class we'll continue with this. F is directly proportional to magnitude of Q1 and magnitude of Q2. So if I have to write magnitude, one small correction, wait. I will remove the positive sign here. There are two charged particles. We don't know which one is positive, which one is negative. And F is inversely proportional to R square. So F should be directly proportional to whom? Product of, okay, and F will be equal to, if you remove the proportionality symbol, the constant that we introduce is K, Q1, Q2 divided by R square. This will be the end of today's class. I will start with this mathematical equation from the next class. Okay. Till then, I want you all to revise and come. See, from next class onwards, I will go more into mathematical details. So prepare well and come. Clear? Any doubts in today's class? That's why it's named after him. That's why it's named after him. Newton. Another Newton's law of gravity. Experimental. Trial and error. Right? So that's it. Guys, on the other side, any doubt?
No, sir.
Clear?
Yes, sir, clear.
Then we can wind up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.